Hilchos Geirushin Perek Shlishi, the laws of divorce, chapter 3. Today the topic is lishma, the idea that the divorce document has to be written with the express intent for the man and the woman whom it's being written for. So I want to hand out, this is a copy of an actual divorce document. It's very hard to get your hands on one of these. Philip, you want one? Okay, so put this down over here for him at the edge of the table. Here, put it down at the edge over there. This is I'll show it on the screen soon, but this is a copy of a divorce document. It's very hard to get your hands on these because scribes do not write this just for fun. You only write a divorce when it's necessary, and afterwards the court keeps it. Even though the husband hands it off to the wife, nowadays they don't let the wife hold on to the divorce. They give her a certificate instead. It's called Geirushin, but the actual document returns back to the hand of the court. So it's very rare to find an actual document. This one actually was written in 1922. 1922, about 100 years ago. And I don't know if you can see on the second line, it says Singapore. This document was written in Singapore. Can you see it? Second line, it's blurry a bit, but you can see it there, Singapore. Also on the third line, Singapore. So apparently this document was discovered in Singapore, and it was auctioned off very recently.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But
the Sfardim were the first ones there.
Yeah.
They probably were just from Iraq.
It sounds pretty Sephardi.
My sister lives in Singapore.
Really?
Yeah. She's been there for 20 years.
Okay, so there you go. And we can use this document for many laws when it comes to the get. So I just printed it out so you can have it, and we're going to refer to some of these things throughout the chapter. Okay? So just hold on to it, have it ready to go. Says the Rambam, Halacha Aleph, we discussed the laws of intent. Kol get, shaloi nichtav l'shem ha'isha megaresh or l'shem ha'isha ha'mizgareshes. Any divorce document that was not written for the sake of the man who is divorcing and for the sake of the woman who's getting divorced, einoi get, is not a divorce. The Rambam told us this in chapter 1. It says in the verse, the kosav lo sefer krisus. You have to write the divorce document for her. That means you have to have in mind that you're doing it for her. Here the Rambam also adds it has to be for him. If the scribe is writing it, he has to have in mind the person and the wife. And the Rambam shows us 4 progressive examples, one greater than the other, how important this concept of intent is. Ketzah, what does this look like? Sefer shekasav get lilamed elihislamid. If a scribe wrote a divorce to teach others how to write it, or for practice for himself. Uba habal, so it wasn't even written for divorce at all. A husband shows up in the scribe's store. Umatza shem shenichtav begeit zeh kishmoi, v'shem ha'isha kishem ishtai. Beautiful. I'm looking at your practice get, and on the practice divorce, the name here is my name. The woman's name is my name. V'shem ha'ir kishem iroi. The city name, exactly, I need it. The city name is like my name. I could use this divorce. Unetale v'geirash, he takes it, and he divorces his wife with it. Einoi get. It's not a divorce. Now this is like the worst level, because here, the scribe didn't even write it having in mind anybody. He wrote it for practice. That's for sure not lishma. That's for sure not with a proper intent. But it gets more than that. Halacha beis, yeser al zeh, more so, kasav legaresh es ishtay. A guy writes a divorce for his own wife, a proper divorce. V'nimlach, then he makes peace, he changes his mind. Doesn't want to go through with a divorce. Umatza ben irai, and he finds a fellow guy in his city who he also knows his marriage is struggling. V'amar la, he tells him, listen, shmi kishimcha, v'shem ishti kishem ishtecha. My name is like your name. My wife's name is the same as your wife's name. I know you need this. Take the document and go divorce. Unetale mimenu v'geirash by, the friend takes it and divorces his wife with it. Afal pisha nichtav l'shem Geirushin, here, it was written for divorce. Originally it was for a couple to get divorced. But einoi get, it's not a divorce. Why? Because it wasn't written for this man and for this woman. That's a higher level of lishma.
So you can't write it without and leave the gaps where the name.
Oh, hold on. With the gaps, we'll soon see. That's a very good question. Can you leave a gap? The Rambam will address that soon. Halacha gimel. Yeser al zeh, even more so. Misha yesh le'shtei nashim sheshmeisei and shavos. A person has 2 wives. They both have the exact same name. Because of legaresh hagdoila, he writes a document with the intent to divorce the older wife. Then he changes his mind and he wants to divorce the younger wife. So here, this is a higher level because here it was written for him. Still, it's not a divorce. Even though it was written for the intent of the man who's divorcing, it wasn't written for the woman who's getting divorced. Let's go even more. Halacha daled yasser al kain. More so. Amar la soifer, a guy tells a scribe, listen, I have two wives. Ksoiv, I want to divorce one of them. I just don't know which one yet. I don't know who's going to get me upset first. So write me a divorce. The one I want, I'm going to divorce her with this document. The kasav ha-sofer al da'azu. And the scribe has intent for that. So now you can say that he actually had intent for both wives. Because that was the condition, right? He says, have in mind, it's the same name, and he wants to divorce whichever one he wants. If later on he divorces one of them, harezu sfeik Geirushin. Now it's a doubtful divorce. Because we don't know, to what level the intent goes. Any document, any divorce document that was written without the proper intent, even if you rewrote, you retraced your same ink marks with your feather, you wrote the exact same thing over the original writing with the proper intent, that isn't the document. It's like by the laws of Shabbat. If you write over already written text, you haven't transgressed the melacha of writing because it's ineffective. It's already there. You're just adding another layer. Same thing over here. If the first layer was improper, you adding another layer is not going to help. Halacha hey, misha kasav get legarish as ishtay. If somebody writes a get, a document to divorce his wife. By the way, totally random fact. Look at the actual the paper here. You can see how many lines is the get. This is standard. Every single divorce document is 12 lines, besides for the witnesses. It's 12 lines. The word in Hebrew for divorce document is get. Gimel and tet have a numerical value of 12. How do you like that?
What, is it supposed to be on parchment?
Yeah, no, they write it today on like fancy paper. It's not necessarily has to be like proper parchment, but not like this. They wouldn't write it on like a fancier, harder, like a cardstock type of a thing.
Right.
Anyway, halacha hey, misha kasav get legarish asishte. Somebody writes a divorce to divorce his wife, v'nim lach v'loy gersha, and he changes his mind, and he doesn't divorce her just yet. V'nisyachid ima achar shekasvei. If they go into seclusion, to the same room alone, after he wrote the divorce, lo yigarshena ba'oisei haget pam acheres k'shegirtza legarsha. That divorce document should no longer be used. If later on, 2 weeks later, you want to actually divorce her, you cannot use that original divorce document. This is called get yashan, an old get. That means you had a document, it wasn't yet given, and you went into seclusion with that woman again. There's a big suspicion, maybe you had relations again.
Right.
Now,
Even though she didn't know.
right. The im gersha ba'oisei haget hayashan. If you did divorce her with the old get, the old document, harezu megureshes v'tinasi b'lechatchila. It's no problem. She's divorced. She can use it initially to get married. We'll soon see why you shouldn't do it. You shouldn't do it, but if you did, it's okay. Shari nichtav lishma. All the check boxes are checked. You wrote it with the proper intent. You gave it now properly with witnesses. There's no issues. So why indeed shouldn't you use it initially? There's a decree that people might say the divorce came before the child. Which means, if you read a divorce today, let's just call it, right? Today is 29th day of Kislev, okay? You read a divorce today. That's the date that it's going to say on the document. According to the Rambam, that's not called predated. As long as you wrote the date of the writing on the document, you're good. So you wrote 29 Kislev. Then, the next day, you go into seclusion with the wife. That's 30th, or 1st of Tevet. And then 2 weeks later, you give a divorce. And 9 months later, she has a kid.
Your kid.
Your kid. People are going to say, 1 second. The divorce date says here, 29th of Kislev. She was divorced before she had this kid. Is it a strange, maybe she's an adulterous woman. So even though in practicality it's fine because you wrote it on that day, you only gave it 2 weeks later. But if you went back to be with her, ideally you shouldn't give the divorce, not to arouse this suspicion. Halacha vav.
Right.
Amar l'soifer. A man tells a scribe. This guy is a bit of a sociopath maybe. I'm not sure exactly how he works. He says like this. K'seiv get l'pleini v'yeh imi. L'pleinis, via imi. I want you to write a divorce document between me and this girl. That way I can have it for storage. Lichisha esa'ena agarshena boy. I'm soon going to get married to her. And when I get married to her, I want to have the divorce document so I can divorce her. This guy's already planning a divorce from before he's even married. The nichtav, the scribe writes it, unisa, he gets married to this woman, v'gersha and then divorces her with it.
That's not uncommon, especially if she's got money. I mean, it's obvious. I mean, I'm just saying, in the back of their minds, no one knows. He doesn't come out with it explicitly before.
It's subconscious planning.
That she's not getting married. But he wants to be married to her for a certain amount of time.
And then take half the estate.
And take half the estate.
Okay.
Or, I'm just saying that people scheme like this without anyone.
You're saying in today's culture, it's not so far off.
You can always write the get later.
Right.
But this is showing you how he's going. Yeah, this is his plan. The point is over here, he wrote the divorce document before they were even married. So eina get, that's not a divorce. Why? She wasn't eligible to be divorced from him when it was written. They weren't even married. This violates the principle of lishma. It wasn't written with the intent for divorce because there was no married couple here yet.
Yeah, no, he wouldn't write it anyway.
Huh?
Because why would he write the divorce if they're not married?
Oh, that's his plan. I'm saying you're saying he had a plan to take away her estate, so he's getting everything prepared. He gets the marriage document ready, the divorce document, everything's lined up.
Like he said, he wouldn't write that.
I know. That's what I'm saying. Maybe he's a bit of a sociopath. Aval amar loy. But if the guy tells the scribe, you know what? We're actually already engaged. I already gave the ring to my girl. Write the divorce document between me and her. When I'm going to divorce her, marry her, I'll divorce her. And indeed, he did marry her, consummated the marriage and divorced her with it. Kosher. That's a kosher get. Why? Because at the time that it was written, they were already bound. They were married in a way, at least engaged by biblical law. What if you wrote the divorce document in advance to the woman who was waiting for levirate marriage? So a person has a brother who dies childless. He's supposed to marry his sister-in-law now. While she's waiting in the wings for him, he has a scribe write a divorce document. And after he consummates the levirate marriage, he divorces her with it. Geirushin. Here it's a doubt. Since she wasn't his complete wife, when he writes it, when a woman is waiting in the wings, they're not here nor there. They're not biblically married, and they're not married. They're kind of bound by a knot.
What's the ramification of Safek Geirushin?
Anytime there's a doubt, so the woman is trapped.
She is not?
Yeah. Practically, she cannot marry anybody else. So you have to redo the divorce. And if the guy dies in between, she is considered to be divorced from the first one. She cannot marry a Kohen. So she's kind of trapped on both sides. Halacha Zayin, Philip asked before about the gaps. Can you write a get and leave out all the important parts and fill those in later? Says the Rambam, indeed you can. In order to help the scribes, the sages allowed a scribe to write the standard generic text of a document. So you can see it on the screen now, but also in front of you on the papers. This is a divorce document. The highlighted, colored parts are what's called the toiref, the mainstay of the get. They are the date. It takes one full line to write the date. Okay? The name of the man and the woman, that's the blue. You can see, it says Shmuel ben Avraham HaMechuna Larry. Because you have to write all the names, we'll soon see. His name is Shmuel and he's called Larry. And the girl's name, Raina. And this green line here is super, super integral to the get. It says, Harei at muteret l'chol adam. That's the line that allows her to now get married to others. It says, you are now permitted to marry anybody. So these four parts here together are called the toiref, the mainstay. Everything else is called the toifes, the generic standard text. So the sages said, look, if you're going to make the scribe write a get every single time, it might take a long time. So let him have a bunch of generic standard texts. V'yaniach, and he'll leave out mekayim ha'ish, u'mekayim ha'isha, the place for the man's name and the woman's name. U'mekayim hazman, the place of the date. U'mekayim harei at muteras l'chol adam, and the place of those 5 words, you are permitted to every person. So you'll end up writing them when the time comes for the man who wants the divorce, for the woman who wants to get a divorce, and then the witnesses will sign for their sake. Beautiful, everybody gains. The scribe gains, he has a ready to go document, and as soon as people come in, he just fills them in. Now today, the Shulchan Aruch already says that the Rambam should not be relied upon. A divorce should be written in its own time. And today, that's the custom that's followed. They don't write. There is no hidden generic documents. If a couple comes to get divorced, the scribe sits there and writes out the whole thing while everybody waits around.
Even the lines are made special while they're doing it.
Okay. See, in other words, because before you write a Torah scroll or a Kabbalah, you have to make special lines. So even those you can't make before. You have to literally make everything on the spot. Halacha ches. Sefer shekasav haget lishmoi v'lishma ki l'chasei. A scribe writes a divorce document properly, with the intent for the man, intent for the woman. And those 2 witnesses who are signing the document, they signed it with the wrong intent. They didn't have intent for the man or woman. What do you think? Good divorce or not a good divorce?
So, how can we know their intent?
They told us afterwards. They said, "Oh, we thought this guy was divorcing the other woman. We didn't realize it was this couple."
The guy who was writing it had
The witnesses. No, the guy writing it had the right intent.
It's good.
The witnesses had the wrong intent. So the Rambam says, "Hoyelu masrei be'edim." Since you also have to give it in front of witnesses. Remember in chapter 1. Besides for the witnesses signing it, you also have to have witnesses watching the divorce. So since you gave it over while kosher witnesses were watching the divorce, harei ze get. Biblically, it's a kosher divorce. Ela shehu pasul, but it's rabbinically disqualified. V'lama einay batal. Why isn't it biblically disqualified? Rabbinic. How can the rabbis override the biblical law? Yeah. That's the basic rule. Whenever the rabbis want to make something else prohibited, they can add decrees to the Torah. It's very hard to permit things that were forbidden by the Torah, but they can forbid things that were permitted by the Torah. Why isn't it biblically disqualified? The only reason witnesses sign the document is because we want to help society. Like the Rambam said in chapter 1, if you're only going to rely on the witnesses who watched it, maybe they're going to die, and later you're going to want to chase them down, you can't find them, and the woman cannot prove her divorce. So the sages said that they should sign the get. So the same sages who said you should sign also said in this case it's disqualified, but biblically it's not disqualified. The Yesh Mishaimer, though, says that there is somebody who says that if the witnesses sign with the wrong intent, since it's like it's falsified from within itself, because you look at the document and it wasn't signed properly, get batal. This Gaon says that it is indeed biblically disqualified. And by the same principle, he says, nothing to do with lishma. But if one of the witnesses was disqualified from being a witness, or only one kosher witness signed it, even though it was given over with proper witnesses, get batal, it's a disqualified get. Now the Rambam already said in chapter 1, that doesn't seem to me to be the right thing. It's like it's falsified, not actually falsified. And since it was handed over with proper witnesses watching, it's only rabbinically disqualified, not biblically. At any rate, we return now to the laws of lishma. Here's an interesting case that affects proper intent. Hamevi get ve'avad mimenu. A person is an agent to bring a divorce document. Husband and wife separated, living in different cities. One guy is bringing a document out to the wife in the other city, and he loses it. Umitzoi, and later he finds it. Im avad mimenu b'makim she'ein hashayaris mitzuyos. If he lost it in a place where lots of people don't travel, there aren't caravans going through constantly. Afilu mitzoi la'achar zman meruba. Even if you find it after much time, harei bechezkas, it can be presumed shahaget she'avad mimenu hu haget she'nimtzo. That the document that was lost is the document that was found, and she can be divorced with it. In other words, we don't have to worry that some other document fell that had the same name and the same wives and everything, and it wasn't written for the proper intent. Because nobody travels here. But if it got lost in a place where there are caravans, lots of people traveling, so now maybe another document fell from somebody else and happened to have the same name, same wife's name. So therefore the Rambam says, Im mitzoi miyad, if you found it right away, and no passerby was delayed over there in the area. Or you found it in the original container in which you had left it. And you have a familiarity. You can tell that this is the same length and width of the document, and it was tied up in the, or rolled up inside this container. But you can be presumed that it's the same thing, and you can use it for divorce. But if there was a delay, or if you didn't find it right away, or you can't really tell if it's the same thing, then you have a problem. You cannot use it because maybe since some people travel there, maybe somebody else dropped the get that was the same name, same wife's name, and you cannot use it. Halacha Yud, another case that affects intent. If there is, in that place where the get was lost, everybody knows that there's one guy who has the same name as the name in the document, you have to suspect that maybe it belonged to that guy. Since people were passing by, even if they didn't wait there for a long time, since we know that there's a guy that has that name, maybe it's his get. And here, if we used it to divorce the original couple, it's only going to be a doubtful divorce. But if nobody passed through there, even if there's a guy who is known to have this name, the original get remains in its original presumption. Even if we know there are two people who have the same exact name, since there was no major delay, you can go give it to the original wife that it was planned for. Halacha Yud Aleph. If the witnesses who signed the divorce document, they had a very clear sign. They know this was their document. For example, they say, there's a hole next to this letter. That's a pretty rare sign. You can only know that if you actually sign the document. Or they said, we only ever signed one document that had these names. So even if there's two couples that have the same exact name, we signed it for the first couple. You can presume that it's okay and divorce the first wife with it. Even if you found it after a long time, and many people travel there, and there are two people who have the same exact names and the same exact wife's names, since the witnesses say we only ever signed one get like this, so it's good. Two husbands have wives that have the same exact name, and they have the same exact name. And they both sent an agent with their divorce document to their wife. And they got mixed up. Each document was written properly, with the intent for the right couple. But now they're mixed up. You don't know which one was for who. We have witnesses watching, and we give both documents to each woman. This way she for sure got her divorce. Doesn't matter that she doesn't know which one was written for her. She got the one that was written for her at the end of the day. Therefore, if one of them gets totally lost, the second one cannot be used at all, because you don't know if it was written for her or for the other wife. Halacha Yud Gimel. The Rambam, in two laws, mentions a law that has become the subject of books, full books, when it comes to divorce. Here's the basic rule. Misha hayule shnei shemes. A person has two names, like in the divorce document you have in front of you. You see it says Shmuel ben Avraham, but he's also called Larry. A person has two names. Or a woman has two names. Kisha megaresh, when you divorce, kaisev shmai ushma, shehein regilin by v'yaydin by b'yaiser. First, you have to write his name and her name, the one that's more common, the one that everybody always uses. V'oimer, and then you have to write ish ploini v'chol shem sheyesh lai, this man so and so, and any other names that he has. Geirish isha ploinis v'chol shem sheyesh la. Divorced this woman with any other name that she has. But if you only wrote their nickname, you didn't write their original name, let's say you wrote Danny instead of Dan or Daniel, kosher, it's still kosher, because at least you used the common name. What if you wrote originally the name which they're not so well known with? And then you wrote the Kosav Kol Shem Sheyesh Lo. Then you wrote, all names that he has. But the original, the main name that you're using isn't his actual main name. His apostle is rabbinically disqualified. So, right, if my full name is Yosef Yitzchak, and people call me Yossi, but nobody really uses Yitzchak. So if you were to write Yitzchak and all other names that he has, that wouldn't work. If you write just Yossi, even though it isn't my proper given name, it's just my nickname, but at least it's the common name. But if you only write the uncommon name and then you add any other names that he has, it doesn't work. Shina shmoya ishma v'shemira yeshemira. If you incorrectly changed the name, you misspelled the name of the husband or the wife, the name of the city, his city or her city. Today we don't write the cities of the people, we write the city where it was written. But if you misspelled the city name, even if you wrote afterwards, whatever names he has, whatever names she has, ain't a get, it is not a get. That's why there's so much literature on how to properly spell names, especially today, when people have these English secularized names or German names, Yiddish names, and city names. There are some places where they actually will not write a document because there's doubt how to spell the name. And if you misspell it, the get is invalid. So you have to know exactly how to write it, where to write it, what to write it. There's full books that are called, Shmot Gitin, names of divorce, how to spell. It's just incredibly complex. But the basic law is, you write the main name. So for example, over here you can see, this guy in the text here, see in the blue, he writes Shmuel ben Avraham, HaMechuneh Larry. So Shmuel ben Avraham is his main name, his given name. Larry was probably, his business name. He lived in Singapore. And look at the next line. I didn't highlight it. But if you see in Aramaic, it says, V'chol shum acharan v'chanicha di'itli, and any other name or nickname that I have. So you include that piece of information there. Because that you have to write the name, nickname, and any other names that you might have. Because maybe some guy, some friend once called you by a different nickname. So you got to include that also. Okay. The final section of this chapter deals with another element of lishma, of intent. Hakol kshedim lichtei v'saget. All people are kosher to write a divorce document, chutz mechamisha, besides for 5 people. Akum ve'eved, an idol-worshipping Gentile, a slave, v'cheresh v'shoite v'katan, a deaf-mute, mentally unstable person, and a child. Afilu isha atzma kesev says Gita. Even a woman can write her own divorce document. It's okay. But the other 5 cannot, because they don't have proper intent, as we'll soon see. Yisrael shenishtamid la'akum, if a Jew became an apostate, he begins to serve idols. Oishu mechalo Shabbos is befarhesya. Or he clearly, publicly violates the Shabbos, for all matters, he's considered to be an idol-worshipping Gentile. He cannot write a divorce document. By the way, the commentators say he should divorce his wife. If he gives a get, she is divorced. But he cannot write it. Why do these 5 people not able to write a document of divorce? Because as we said, the whole chapter, the person writing the document must write it for the sake of the man being divorced, the woman being divorced. An idol-worshipping Gentile won't listen to the Jews. He'll write with his own intent. He won't care what the Jews are saying. Deaf, mute, mentally unstable, and a child don't have mental capacity to have intent. And the slave isn't even in the context of the laws of divorce and marriage. So they don't apply to him, so he can't make a divorce. Lefichach, therefore, who pasul ka'akum l'chol dvarav. He is disqualified like a guy, like an idol-worshipping Gentile, for all matters. If one of these 5 guys wrote a divorce document, ein a get, that is not a divorce. Even if kosher witnesses signed it, kosher witnesses watched the handover, doesn't matter. It was written without the proper intent. Halacha Yud Zayin, Kosav Echad Mechamisha Elu, Toifes Haget. What if these 5 guys only wrote the generic text? They didn't fill in the red and the blue and the green. They wrote the standard text. And they left the place of the Torah, the mainstay of the get, the essential parts. The place of the man, the woman's name, the date, and the final line over there, you are permitted to every man. The an adult, competent Jew wrote it with the proper intent. Hareza get kosher, that's a kosher get, because the main parts were written by a good Jew. It isn't only after the fact. Even initially, you could have a deaf mute or a mentally unstable person or a child write the generic parts of the get. So long as they're being supervised by an adult, competent male. But an idol-worshipping Gentile and a slave, even if they have an adult supervising them, they cannot write the generic parts of the get to begin with. Because the only permission to write generic parts of the document without proper intent initially is only given elam mipnei takana sefer kamei shaviyar. And it was only given to help the scribe. And here, these are non-Jews and slaves. We don't want to help them. No need. So we don't let them write the get even initially.
So what are we going to say while we are printing them and there are goy who's...
No, we cannot print them. They have to be handwritten. Scribes got to sit there and handwrite them. This is all like a mezuzah. It's handwritten. Final halacha. Kind of related to lishma, but not really. Hakaisev get b'Shabbos b'Yom Kippurim b'Shgag. A person writes a divorce document on Shabbat or on Yom Kippur. The husband himself writes a document, and he gives unasanela, and he gives it to the woman. Harezu megureshes. She's divorced. We assume, because again, he did it inadvertently. He wasn't aware, and there's no problem. But if he wrote it and he signed it on that day, Shabbat or Yom Kippur, purposely, and they gave it to the woman, eina megureshes, not divorced, for a different reason. Shari ha'edim psulin min ha'Torah, because the witnesses who violated Shabbat are disqualified biblically. If he wrote it on a regular holiday where it's less severe to write on holiday than on Shabbat or Yom Kippur, the nimsar la bifnei edim kshedim b'yamtiv, and it was handed over in front of kosher witnesses on the holiday, that is a get puzzle. Here it's only rabbinically disqualified. Biblically it's okay, because you didn't violate the highest level of prohibition. But rabbinically, you shouldn't use such a divorce document.